Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins, where we're going to talk a little bit about Big Pharma being in the news again, seeming like they're getting away with murder, so to speak. War in Syria, and that's continuing, we spoke about in our last broadcast, and Trump's message, actually a letter that he sent to Erdogan regarding that very thing. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about parents hoping to give their children the best nutrition, as most parents want to give their children. A new study has found toxic heavy metals in 95% of baby food. Now, the study put together by Healthy Babies Bright Future also said that those metals can damage a baby's brain development. Testing 168 baby foods, they found lead in 95% of them, arsenic and cadmium in almost 3/4, and mercury in almost 1/3. Now, the group suggests parents avoid giving children rice, cereals, and fruit juices, which were some of the worst offenders.
Well, we've brought you reports on the increase in suicides among those in the military and young people, but a new study revealed suicide rates among young people has increased over 50% in the last decade. Now, these statistics cover the age range of 10 to 24 years old between 2007 and 2017. Now, suicides rose 56% and homicide rates rose between the year 2014 and 2017 as well. Now, Dr. Jennifer Cottle, a family physician and professor at Rowan University, said suicide is not usually caused by one thing. It's caused by a number of factors such as mental health disorders, family abuse, life stressors, social media, bullying, and grappling with gender identity.
Purdue Pharmaceuticals has filed for bankruptcy and reached an agreement with 22 state attorney generals regarding its malfeasance and lawsuits. Some attorney generals have cried that it's not enough for some of these billionaires to use bankruptcy to shield their assets and avoid accountability. Also, the proposed deal isn't worth what they say it is and doesn't even require the Sacklers to pay back a dime of the billions of dollars they sucked out of Purdue through the sales of OxyContin.
Well, the opioid epidemic has claimed over 400,000 lives, including 9,000 children who died from exposure to the drug. Now, there isn't any talk of jailing the offenders in the case because it's a civil suit, not a criminal case. But the question on a lot of people's mind is, when a big pharmaceutical company puts profits over public safety and their actions result in hundreds of thousands of deaths, shouldn't they face some type of penalty? Well, Patrick McGinley with the College of Law in West Virginia University said, if the criminal law was brought to bear on those responsible, this type of conduct would be unlikely to be repeated.
Right. Well, this is part of the issue with the legal system regarding big companies. For example, when GM put an ignition switch in an area where the driver could inadvertently turn it off, resulting in 124 deaths, the company actively tried to cover this up, even working to derail a recall. Well, what occurred with that? The CEO was grilled by the U.S. Senate, but of course, no one went to jail. But GM got fined $900 million and had its production closely monitored by the government for 3 years.
Well, but who took responsibility for the loss of the 124 innocent lives as a result of the flaw? No one. Well, McGinley said there are principals and corporations not only in this country but around the world who escape criminal liability because of the power and money they command. And if the people at the top of the company who are responsible for the opioid epidemic were to be criminally prosecuted, they would think twice or maybe not engage in these activities to begin with.
But for the average Americans, the penalties are not so soft, with the U.S. having the highest prison population in the world, along with the only Western country in the world to still practice the death penalty, along with sentences of life in prison without the possibility of parole handed out all the time for similar crimes as these big companies. The rules seem to be in the U.S. justice system: kill one person in a fit of rage, you're going to jail possibly for life. Kill hundreds or even thousands of people in pursuit of bigger profits, pay a fine, and don't lose any sleep over it.
Wow, hardly seems fair. Well, we're now going to turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who has been covering the latest on the Turkish invasion in northern Syria. Now, President Erdogan actually laid down some terms for halting the invasion and what the Kurdish forces that he's fighting against would have to do if to stop the this offensive from Turkey. But Larry McGee has been covering the details. Larry, what is the latest on this situation in Syria that has grown increasingly worse over the years?
Now that the Turkish government has tasted blood, the U.S. and several of its associates, including the Arab League, appear to be having difficulty convincing them to halt and reconsider their intentions with regard to the Syrian Kurds. The same Kurdish population feels as if it's been abandoned and hung out to dry after having apparently outlived its usefulness as a member of the Syrian Democratic Forces that were used by the U.S. to combat ISIS in the region. Turkey has long regarded the Kurdish group, the PKK, or the Kurdistan Workers' Party, to be a terrorist group. Now, the U.S. and EU have them listed as terrorist organizations as well, but they are urging restraint and in some cases condemning the actions presently being taken by Ankara to eliminate what it is calling a terror corridor along its border. The controversial operation has been in action for a week, and despite the uproar from the West, President Erdogan has refused to yield and has instead given the PKK an ultimatum to lay down their arms and evacuate the area that they have set up as a questionable safe zone. President Trump is reported to be dispatching a high-level delegation to Turkey this week, with the threat and possibility of heavy U.S. sanctions for non-compliance already on the table. Still, President Erdogan is expected not to budge due to intense fear and distrust. Turkey allegedly sees the Kurdish presence along its border as a threat, and it is a threat that Mr. Erdogan simply no longer intends to ignore. For many analysts and the Kurds, however, President Erdogan's true intentions are quite different from those publicly stated. They believe Ankara is motivated by conquest, and they view the proposed safe zone as an effort to push the Kurds off of choice in key land in order to appropriate and annex those same areas for Turkish use. While it is suspected that the Kurds will fight back with as much verve as they can muster, analysts say they will be no match for the force of the Turkish army, and the end result will be hundreds of thousands of more refugees. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, it seems like the people in Syria just can't catch a break. First, the offensive we saw taking place with the United States and Russia in the country, and I know that they were working to fight against the terrorists there. But then after the United States decides to pull out, now Syria is coming in from the north and dealing Syria another, Turkey's coming in from the north, and dealing Syria another blow.
Right, and as they mentioned there, as Larry was covering, that northern part is really where they have all the big cities where they're very populated. So that would displace, as they said, hundreds of thousands of more people, which has already been very hard on the Syrian population and also the nations around there that are trying to, or at least some of them have tried to help these people. So it puts a whole strain on the whole region.
It sure does. Well, White House officials have confirmed the authenticity of a letter the president sent on October the 9th to President Erdogan of Turkey. The letter is Trump's attempt to reverse Erdogan's decision to invade Turkey, which has already caused the deaths of many U.S.-backed Kurdish fighters in Syria, as well as some Syrian civilians, and raised alarms of a possible genocide.
Well, Trump writes, "Let's work out a good deal. You don't want to be responsible for slaughtering thousands of people, and I don't want to be responsible for destroying the Turkish economy, and I will." Now, the letter concludes with, quote, "History will look upon you favorably if you get this done the right and humane way. It will look upon you forever as the devil if good things don't happen. Don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool. I will call you later. Sincerely, Donald Trump."
Some strong words there. Well, just 3 days prior to this letter, the two presidents talked on the phone, and as a result, President Trump announced the U.S. would be pulling its troops out of Syria, fully aware of Turkey's plan to enter the country. Well, Republicans and Democrats had just left an unproductive meeting with President Trump in which Nancy Pelosi said it was a meltdown by the President of the United States. So there is definitely disagreement on what the U.S. should do next.
Well, even though President Trump's letter was a severe warning, President Erdogan has not been deterred. In fact, according to the Sky News, the Turkish president does not even want to talk to the Vice President of the United States. So what everyone is actually wondering about is that phone call between Trump and Erdogan, what actually was discussed prior to that letter.
Well, even though the U.S. president had planned to tell Erdogan to stay north of Syria's border, it doesn't seem like he went with the plan. While it's clear the U.S. was made aware of Turkey's plan to begin some type of operation in Syria, it was unclear what stance the president took to begin with.
Well, now just a week after Turkish forces invaded Syria, Vice President Mike Pence brings news of a positive development to the situation. In a news conference, Vice President Pence told reporters, "Today, I'm proud to report, thanks to the strong leadership of President Donald Trump and the strong relationship between President Erdogan and Turkey and the United States of America, that today the United States and Turkey have agreed to a ceasefire in Syria."
Pence explained further, saying, "The Turkish side will pause Operation Peace Spring in order to allow for the withdrawal of YPG forces from the safe zone for 120 hours. All military operations under Operation Peace Spring will be paused, and Operation Peace Spring will be halted entirely on completion of the withdrawal," Pence said.
We'll have to see how that ceasefire works out. A lot of times they don't always go as planned.
Yeah, that's true. We've seen that a lot of times in Israel and the Palestinians.
Well, Vladimir Putin moves closer to his promise of deploying new missile defense systems in 2019. Now, Russia recently performed a test firing of its new high-speed hypersonic missile. President Putin announced the new Vanguard missile system is invincible against today's and future air and missile defense systems of the potential enemy. This is a big success and a great achievement.
Well, military analyst and retired U.S. Colonel Cedric Layton tells CNN, if the weapons work as advertised, there's no current defense against them. Former Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan warned in order for the U.S. to be able to detect the high-speed missile approaching, it would need to improve its radar systems to detecting incoming missiles thousand miles away instead of the hundreds of miles away like they do now.
Well, there have been talks of the Pentagon spending over $1 billion trying to develop its own capabilities. Shanahan had even stated, "We have a number of options going on with hypersonic missiles. While Russia is making significant claims about their missiles, they have yet to prove them," which I'm not sure if you want them to prove what those missiles are capable of doing. But he said, "Here's what they are saying, though. It's capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, it can fly up to 20 times faster than the speed of sound, and it can adjust altitude and direction to avoid detection." And that's why President Vladimir Putin is saying it's basically invincible.
Yeah, and this is not the first time we've heard a higher up in the United States military saying, hey, we don't have a defense against these type of missiles. So, you know, it's kind of a concern with the U.S. military as countries such as Russia and now we know in the mix China start to advance their weaponry, because it kind of leaves the United States in a vulnerable place.
Right, and not only do they not have it, the defenses against them, for them to make a defense or build a defense would be years to come. It wouldn't be something that they could do real quick. Right. So, like you said, a lot of analysts have agreed that we're very vulnerable right now to those type of missiles.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Colonel Layton says Putin feels incredibly emboldened. Putin believes this is the time to press his advantage. He's put his forces in eastern Ukraine. He's, of course, taken over Crimea. He's now gaining ground in Syria. This is Russia's time, in his view.
Well, the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China was commemorated with a huge military parade. Now, some of the most advanced weaponry in the world was paraded through the streets of Beijing. China unveiled a new range of high-tech weapons to its rivals for the first time.
One of the largest in the pack was the intercontinental ballistic missile. They say it can carry up to 10 nuclear warheads and reach the United States in just 30 minutes. Not much time for warning there. It has a range of 9,000 miles, which is further than any other nuclear missile in the world.
Well, in the Air Force Division, they have a new strategic bomber and their first ever stealth fighter jet, both designed to project power over the Pacific Ocean. But probably the most impressive of all were the weapons of the future. There was the Sharp Sword combat drone. Now, this drone is an unmanned aerial combat vehicle that could eliminate the need for actual piloted fighter jets.
And finally, the supersonic reconnaissance drone, which was designed to locate American aircraft carriers far out in the Pacific Ocean, and a hypersonic missile that flies like a streamlined dart over 5 times faster than the speed of sound. Its speed is so fast that it could certainly penetrate all existing missile defenses used by the West.
Well, you certainly see Russia, China, both of them well advanced in their military capabilities. China there displaying it in the parade almost for the whole world to see. Look, this is what we have. Don't mess with us. Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, basically saying the same thing, that these missiles that we have now, they're invincible. They can't be touched. And as we reported, he's kind of saying, you know, it's our time right now. He's not worried about what anybody else can do. But so as we see these nations preparing for war, we do know that there is one man who continues to prepare for peace and teaches the ways of peace, the laws of Yahweh and the peaceful solution, and that's Yisrael Hawkins. He teaches a way that is guaranteed to make friends out of enemies and to solve the problems that we see the nations fighting about today. So if you'd like to learn more about the stories you heard today or even other ones, please call, write, or email the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. Or you can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the free Yisrael Says and Ask Yisrael programs available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the internet to aid you in studying and understanding your Holy Scriptures and Bible prophecies for this time period. You can find those by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another enlightening and inspiring message from Yisrael Hawkins, guaranteed to tell you and your family what you can do to protect yourself from the worst time of trouble that's coming upon this earth. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.